2.
Malik Nabers?
Yes. Though I do believe it's basically a coin flip between him and Odunze. And I actually had Odunze ahead, and I flipped them. But
I have Odunze third, so we're both the same. Nabers and Odunze.
I think pretty much almost everybody, apparently Chris Sims breaks the consensus, but almost everybody has the top 3 as these 3 guys in some order. Harrison, Nabers, Odunze. Like I said, I started off, and I had Odunze ahead, and I flipped Nabers above him, but I do think that they're right there as a coin flip. I think Nabers is more polished. I think he's a better sort of quick-moving, sudden route runner, really nice yards after catch. I think Odunze is just this, like, big, strong, physical, like, athlete without it being a pejorative. I'm not saying, like, he's raw and can't do anything. He's just an athlete playing the game. But, like, just this physically imposing receiver right now, like the most physically imposing of those top 3 guys.
Yeah, I like Nabers a lot. I think, again, I mentioned the explosiveness earlier. I mean, I'll just cite these stats, right? He's the fastest that we have here, as far as the top 5 speeds go. Over the last 2 years, the average of Malik Nabers' top 5 speeds is a little higher than Xavier Worthy, over 22 miles an hour. Again, it doesn't mean he's definitely the fastest. I think he had a lot of opportunities, right? They ran a million slot fades. The Jaden Daniels analysis coincides with the Malik Nabers and the Brian Thomas Jr. analysis. Those guys both got to run a million slot fades, and so the more opportunities you run to run go routes, the more opportunities you have to run fast. But Nabers was awesome at that. I mean, I think he explodes into his routes, in and out of his routes, explodes after the catch. I'm talking mostly about his athleticism because I think you feel it, and then you combine that with his toughness, man. Think about how many times, even when we love our smaller receivers, we love Tank Dell, we love some of these receivers who are like jitterbugs out there, but it's tough over the middle of the field, right? Malik Nabers is physical. I saw him being physical in a lot of the passes that I think cornerbacks are breaking up and, getting their hands in and jarring the ball loose. It's not happening with Nabers over the middle of the field. So I think that's why people are discussing him in the Marvin Harrison Jr. conversation, because he can do it all.
Yeah, I mean, he's got elite quickness, like his quick twitch, immediate stuff. The stuff that I said I didn't love about Harrison last year and he got a lot better at this year, Nabers is just off the charts at that stuff. Like his quick twitch, instant movement is insane. Really, really sudden just in everything he does. The thing that I like the most about him is he works back to the quarterback, back to the ball exceptionally well. Even like at the last second or with the last step, before the ball arrives, he's always taking a step towards the ball. That makes a difference at the catch point. Like, you don't have to be a physically imposing, just dominant, Xavier Legette, Drake London type of receiver. If you're willing to take an extra half step right before the ball arrives, you're changing the whole dynamic and you're getting there ahead of the defender, even if he's in good position and good coverage. Nabers does that instinctively really well. Just every time the ball arrives, he's moving towards it. It makes such a difference in terms of whether those passes are going to be complete or not. My big concern about him all the way along has always been he lets defenders into his pads too often, right? He has this release at the line of scrimmage that is this shoulder shrug thing to try and get away from press coverage. It might be something they're taught at LSU. Somebody's brought that up before. I don't know if that's true or not. Either way, you can't do it at the NFL, and it doesn't work that often in college either. Like, there's so many plays where he should be absolutely roasting people, and he isn't, because they get their hands on his pad, and he's not able to shed that contact. Contrast that with Marvin Harrison. Harrison always sheds that contact. Like, the guy is almost never able to get his hand and stay on Marvin Harrison Jr. Nabers, there's way too many plays in his tape where he should have gotten rid of the contact, should have cleared it, and hasn't been able to. And whether it's the shoulder shrug thing or whether he simply needs to improve his hand use once he's tried that and failed, either way, that needs to change at the NFL level.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see. I was just watching a little more. I went back to watch more Brian Thomas Jr., and I kind of saw the dip. I saw a little bit of that from him too. Maybe it is.
So yeah, somebody has said this is something that LSU teach, and okay, cool. Either way, it needs to change at the NFL level, because number one, it doesn't work in the NFL. Number two, I think it's created some bad habits later on in the route, like later on in the stem, because you can't just, okay, shrug, you missed press, now you're running, but you still need to use your hands to make sure the guy isn't able to basically get hold of you and ride your coattails on the route, right? You need to get rid of him and separate. You need to actually break the physical connection. And I don't know if it's because he's taught at the line of scrimmage not to use your hands that he then doesn't use them throughout the rest of the route, but that's what's happening at the moment too often.
We'll get into Odunze in a minute here, but first, is 2024 bringing exciting or unexpected changes to your life? Well, here's a secret weapon to help you face those challenges with more confidence. It's a great term life insurance policy. That's right, Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to protect your family's financial future so you can focus on what's ahead, knowing your family is protected if something else unexpected happens. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to coverage in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So, join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Policy is issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Price is subject to underwriting and health questions. Last year at this time, I think we also went. Remember, these are our rankings. You and I, our own individual rankings.
Uh-huh.
It'll differ from the PFF draft board. I think we went through. It was Renner at the time last year. Went through where he was in wide receiver rankings, so we can go where kind of keep up with where Trevor is too in the official PFF draft board that comes with him. He's in lockstep with us as far as top three. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, 2 and 4 on the big board. Respectively, and then number 6 on the big board is Rome Odunze, both of our wide receiver threes.
Yeah.
Discuss.
I mean, we mentioned him up top. Like, he's the best physically imposing receiver of those three. He's big, strong, fast, got good hands. He's, I think, better at the catch point than Malik Nabers in terms of winning those contested catches as opposed to the catch point where Nabers wins, which is that move towards the ball. So sort of different styles at the catch point, I guess, but when it's contested, I think Odunze is a better receiver than Nabers at the catch point. He sheds press with his hands really well.
He caught 75% of his contested passes this year.
Yeah, he's really good at that.
We have 417 seasons of receiver seasons who went on to play in the NFL. That's number 6 out of 417. 75% of his contested catches.
Yeah, he's very, very good at that. I think of the three, he has the worst feel for sort of setting up defenders with his routes. I'm not saying he's a bad route runner, but I don't think he has the same understanding as the other two in terms of manipulating defenders with his routes and how to move them without physically moving them. You know what I mean? Just move them with your routes. And then the other note I have on him is he gets mugged by defenders more than any wide receiver I can remember watching. They're just tackling him constantly. It's amazing.
Because in single coverage, do you think he separates as well as some of those other guys? Is that based on he's running such a vertical route tree? Because to me, like the highlight reel with him and Michael Penix Jr. is all vertical, right?
Yes.
It's all go balls and back shoulders, and so is that just the nature of the routes?
It's part of that, and I think it's part also what we said, that he doesn't have the same feel as the other two of getting defenders out of your way without doing it physically. So there's plays where Marvin Harrison Jr. or Nabers will manipulate the defender with their route, and that's why they separate, right? In addition to then the break and all that kind of stuff. It sort of maximizes the separation you get. I think Odunze is much more sort of mechanical with his route running and doesn't have that feel for how to shift them with that because he knows he can probably win by just running the route and being better than they are.
Yeah, Odunze, he's one of those, him and Penix Jr., it's one of those things where they worked together so well. And I think for like when you're evaluating both players, I'm thinking, well, Michael Penix Jr. as a quarterback, if you give him a receiver and work the vertical game with him, if you have someone who has that really good field, Michael Penix Jr. throws those laser beams, man, head high, away from coverage, and that's a great part of Penix Jr.'s game. And then I look at Odunze, and it's like that's a great part of Odunze's game, right?
Yeah.
Is the back shoulder work, and that's why I think especially before the Jets got Mike Williams at 10, I was thinking, man, if Odunze gets to 10 with the Jets, him and Aaron Rodgers as a combination would be outstanding because you could just see Rodgers immediately as a rookie just saying, hey, let's just work the vertical tree, fades and back shoulders, and you have value there immediately. Not that that's the only thing that he can do. It just feels like we saw so much of that at Washington, and that's a big strength of Odunze's.
Yeah, and I think, when you're talking about Odunze, the important thing is sort of context, right? Like, is how good he is in a vacuum, and then how good he is relative to Harrison and Nabers, and that those are slightly different things. Like, I think in a lot of drafts, Odunze would be the top wide receiver off the board.
Yep.
In this draft, he's probably going to be the third wide receiver off the board. But so we shouldn't lose sight of what he actually is when we're talking about these things. So when you say things like, does he separate that well? Well, relative to Nabers and Harrison,
saying relative to those guys,
not really. Relative to like the rest of the class, fine. Absolutely not a problem. So, like, again, I think Odunze in most wide receiver years would be the first wide receiver off the board. I think he's an incredible talent, and I think he's Nabers. You have the question of, can we fix that shoulder shrug release, and can we get him to use his hands better? No reason you can't, and his ceiling is incredibly high if you can do that. With Odunze, I think there's the biggest gap between what he is right now and what he could be if we improve a few bits of nuance, right? I'm not saying he has the highest ceiling, but I think he's the furthest away from his ceiling right now of the three. So even if he's worse than the other two at the moment, I think the ceiling might be the same. So he's an incredibly enticing prospect to me.
Odunze ran 4.45 at the combine. His speed numbers are a little bit lower than the top two guys, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, or the Brian Thomas Jr., who
at 6'3", 212 pounds.
Right,
so,
he's bigger, but his athleticism, his gas,
the gas
is strong. 3 years running.
Big gas tank.
Yeah, good gas.
Good gas.
Good gas, and gas is also adjusted for size at varying levels depending on the position. So there's the size adjustment there is saying, hey, this dude's plenty good from an athletic standpoint. So listen, I think it's a clear top three. When we have a Chris Sims on the show, and he's got Marvin Harrison Jr. as 3 and Brian Thomas Jr. as 2. I think far more people are closer to this is a clear top 3. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze. The consensus draft board, the latest version I have, has them at 4, 5, and 6. The PFF draft board has them at 2, 4, and 6. So this is those top 3. I think across the NFL, you're going to get some level of those 3 guys at the top. Usually Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers is 1.
Almost universal consensus. This is your 1, 2, 3 in some order, and then there's a gap to the next guys, and that's the way we have it. So
in other words, we're just puppets.
Yeah.
And puppeting
for big draft.
For big draft. Yeah. Puppets for big draft.
So